Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful tool used in healthcare every single day, the Braden Scale. We're going to zoom in on one critical piece of it, sensory perception, and see how getting it right is key to protecting patients.
So let me start with a question for you. What's the hidden sense that protects patients from harm? I'll give you a hint. It's not sight, and it's not sound. It's the body's own internal alarm system. And understanding this is absolutely crucial for preventing some really painful and dangerous pressure injuries.
And that leads us right into our first section. What exactly is sensory perception? Now, that term might make you think about, your five senses, but in a clinical setting like this, it actually means something way more specific, and getting that distinction is everything. So according to the Braden Scale, sensory perception is a patient's ability to do three key things. First, they have to be able to detect discomfort from pressure. Second, they need to actually feel that it's painful. And third, and this is the most important part, they have to be able to respond to it by moving. So it's not just about feeling, it's about acting on that feeling.
And this right here is where people get tripped up all the time. When we talk about sensory perception in this context, we are not talking about whether a patient can see a chart on the wall or hear you speaking. We're talking about their neurological response system, how their nerves and their brain work together to protect their body from too much pressure.
Let's just quickly walk through that pathway. It all starts with a pressure stimulus, right? Maybe from lying in one spot for too long. From there, the peripheral nerves send a signal up the spinal cord, straight to the brain. The brain then interprets that signal as discomfort or pain. Then, it sends a message back down, which triggers a motor response. The person moves. A problem anywhere along that chain is a huge red flag.
Okay, so we get what it is, but how do clinicians actually measure it? Well, let's get into the scoring system. The Braden Scale keeps it pretty simple with a 1 to 4 score, and you can think of it like a stoplight, going from high-risk red to low-risk green.
So here's a quick snapshot of the whole thing. A score of 1 is completely limited. That means no response. A 2 is very limited, where they only respond to pain. A 3 is slightly limited, they'll respond if you ask them to, and a 4 is perfect, no impairment. So now, let's break down what each of these really means for a patient.
All right, let's start with a score of 1. This is the highest risk level. This is your patient who's probably unconscious or maybe deeply sedated. The bottom line is they can't feel pain or pressure anywhere. Their internal alarm system is just completely offline.
Now, a score of 2 is really interesting because there's a key difference here. This patient will respond to a painful stimulus. They might moan or get restless. But here's the kicker. They can't tell you what's wrong or where it hurts, so they can't really ask for help to get repositioned. They feel it, but they can't communicate it effectively.
Okay, with a score of 3, we're dealing with a patient who can respond to you. You can ask them to move, and they will. The problem is they have some kind of sensory impairment, maybe from something like diabetic neuropathy. That means they might not even feel the pressure building up in certain spots. So they have the ability to move, but they're missing the trigger to do it on their own.
And finally, we get to a score of 4. This is our goal. This patient is fully conscious, their nervous system is working just like it should, they feel pressure building up, and they can either move themselves or ask for help without anyone needing to tell them. Their whole protective system is a go.
Okay, so the scores seem pretty straightforward, right? A 1, 2, 3, or 4. But, healthcare is almost never that simple. Let's get into our next section and talk about some of those special situations where it takes some real clinical judgment. And this right here, this is the golden rule for this entire section. A sensory disability is absolutely not the same thing as a neurological impairment for this scale. That's a super important distinction to make. So let's take a couple of really clear examples. Say you have a patient who is blind or a patient who is deaf. That does not mean they automatically get a lower score. The only question that matters is their neurological sensation for pressure working? If they can feel that discomfort and they can communicate it, whether that's by talking, writing, or even using gestures, they can totally be a score 4. So it really all boils down to a simple but really powerful little guide. All a clinician has to ask is, 1, can the patient feel pressure? 2, can they express that they're uncomfortable? And 3, do they move on their own to fix it? The answers to those 3 questions will point you right to the correct score.
So we've covered the what and the how. Now for the part that really matters. The why. Why is getting this one little number right so incredibly important? Let's talk about the final takeaway.
At the end of the day, it's really this simple. When you get the score right, you identify a patient who's at risk. And identifying that risk is the first and the most important step in preventing those really painful and costly pressure injuries, what a lot of people call bed sores.
And
You know, this really points to a much bigger truth. Tools like the Braden Scale are fantastic, but they're only as good as the skilled person using them. This isn't just about checking a box. It's about sharp observation, critical thinking, and a real commitment to keeping patients safe.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. In a world that's just full of monitors, data, and all these automated alerts, how vital is that fundamental skill of just human observation and keeping our most vulnerable patients safe from harm? Thanks for watching.